Hello and welcome to Procrastination Points video Snark. I'm currently reading through the Betrothed by Kiera Cass. This is not the first video of this book, so I'd recommend that you watch the other videos before you start this. Links are posted below. Chapter 19. After all of the build-up of Valentina's character and a promise of more to come from the previous chapter, the narration quickly brushes off Valentina as having tired and Hollis quickly moving on to do something else. She walks across the palace to where the Eastoff family is staying. Her goal is Scarlet, but she can't help thinking about Silas. She goes on a tangent about how handsome and nice that he is, but then immediately does an about-face and says that none of it matters since Silas isn't Jameson. Inside the room, Scarlet points to a building and says that it's where Silas and Sullivan are working. She explains that the brothers will put up a blue handkerchief in the window if they need Scarlet to do something for them. So her entire role seems to be to sit around and wait to be needed by her brothers. Scarlet and Hollis try to tell each other that the other is great. No, really. She then goes back to talking about the work that the brothers do. She says that Silas has burned himself so badly that the entire family was insanely worried about him. It was well known that the healers in Isolate had made far more medical advancements than we had in Corona. If Isolate could use our dances and music and art, could we not use their knowledge about medicine and herbs and the stars? It's honestly kind of sad how quickly Hollis has changed her tune about Isolate. I mean, it's good that she's growing as a person, but at the same time, come on. Hollis then gives Scarlet a gift and says that she wants for Scarlet to become one of her ladies-in-waiting. However, she needs to work on Delia to accept Scarlet. I mean this in the nicest way possible, but I don't see Delia Grace ever being open-minded. First off, this literally has nothing to do with Delia. Hollis is going to be the queen, and Delia is the servant. Second, how does that saying go about throwing rocks when you live in glass houses? Delia's entire backstory consists of people judging her because of her father's poor behavior, and then Delia herself runs around and is judgy McJudgy. What a hypocrite. The worst part about this exchange about Delia is that Hollis laughs it off and agrees with Scarlet about the entire thing. Like, even Hollis knows that Delia is trash. Which is what I was trying to say about Delia at the end of the previous chapter, about why Delia and Hollis's relationship doesn't feel on the same level as Hollis's budding relationship with Valentina, because Delia isn't nice. I love it when books have just enough self-awareness to understand why things like this are bad, but not enough self-awareness to actually fix the problem. Anyway, Scarlet turns down Hollis's offer, saying that her family wants to move out to the countryside soon. Hollis is sad at the thought of losing her new friends. She's also sad at the thought of never seeing Silas again. But her sadness over Silas is also a double-edged sword because it means she wouldn't continue having to see him and keep reminding her of how secretly unhappy she is with Jameson. Haha, whoops. Hollis hasn't exactly realized that yet, but I think we all know it's coming. Scarlet opens the present Hollis had given her and gushes over the dress. She says that she enjoys dancing with Hollis and hopes they can do it again. She also talks about some family member of hers, but that isn't exactly relevant to anything. Hollis then makes her excuses and says that she needs to get back to entertaining Valentina. And I thought that it was late, but I guess Valentina just went to take a nap rather than to go to bed. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Chapter 20. Now we get the promised Valentina and Hollis playing the dice game in the evening. I don't know why the book decided to take a random detour through that Scarlet subplot, but whatever. Valentina asks that it just be the two of them in the room that night, so Hollis waits alone in her room. When Valentina shows up, she brags about how much money she used to make off from men at her own court, but now she says that everybody keeps their distance. Although I'm not quite sure if this is because she's that good at gambling or if it's because she's the queen. Valentina seems surprised when Hollis tells her that they're in the queen's rooms. He hasn't given you a ring? Not yet. He wanted to be cautious, but now it seems everyone knows his intent, so it should be happening soon. I'm honestly kind of waiting for that 11th hour shoe to drop. You know, the drama that's going to persist to carry the start of this series into the next book, because if Hollis and Jameson simply get married, then, like, what's the point? Valentina seems almost jealous of the carefree nature of Jameson and Hollis's relationship. Hollis again asks Valentina about her relationship with Quentin, and she gives Hollis more details. She says that after Queen Vera died, it almost seemed certain that Quentin wouldn't remarry. She remarks that Vera and Quentin seemed pretty in love, and he was sad when she died. And since Quentin had a male heir, there wasn't exactly a whole lot of point about getting remarried anyway. But then word started to get around about how sickly that Hardin actually was. The few girls who were approached by the king were quite suddenly engaged. One of them's Sissika Arman, I'm not even gonna attempt, was a dear friend of mine, and I know for a fact her arrangements were made the very day her family was called to meet with Quentin. Why? I asked. At the very least, these girls had an opportunity to be royal. I asked the same question myself then. Now I know they were very smart. Valentina then takes a random detour and says that Quentin has found a match for Hardin, and the two of them will be married in the winter. Hollis, however, is like, wait, keep talking about Quentin. Give me the dirt, girl. Valentina presses on with her story. Thanks to her frequent travel, she was more than a little out of the loop as far as gossip around her king went. Furthermore, a few weeks prior to her engagement to Quentin, Hardin had a nasty fever that almost killed him. So basically, exactly as Ethan said about Valentina earlier, Quentin doesn't care about Valentina, only her ability to bear him a son. However, Valentina says something to hint that things aren't quite right in that regard. Hollis doesn't really know what to say in response to any of that. Valentina tells her that it's common, especially for a political marriage. Hollis then asks about what happened to the lord that Valentina was set to marry. Valentina doesn't really know, but last she heard he had moved out to the countryside. She speculates that he's probably married to somebody else by now. This prompts Hollis to think that it will someday happen to Silas, that the Eastoff family will move to the Corona countryside and he'll meet some other girl. Valentina asks if Jameson has ever been unkind to Hollis. When Hollis says no, Valentina sits down and begins to cry. She says that she's already had 2 miscarriages, and she's been 2 months without a period right now, and she's insanely worried about this one not making it. She goes on and promises Hollis secrecy. After Hollis promises, Valentina goes on. She says that everybody always assumes that Valentina is simply above all of these peasants now that she's married to Quentin. However, it's Quentin who is forcing that isolation into Valentina, which, danger, Will Robinson! One of the signs of abusers is keeping people apart from their friends and family. They can't escape from the toxic situation if they've got nowhere else to turn. Valentina says that her handmaid doesn't even speak the same language. She is completely and utterly isolated, and she is so afraid. However, as sheltered as Hollis is, she doesn't even begin to grasp how terrible that Valentina's situation even is. Valentina also implies that her parents didn't die of the flu, and the same thing could happen to her if she fails to produce an heir soon. And Hollis continues not to grasp what's happening. Not fully, anyway. Valentina then gets up and leaves. Hollis sits for a moment and mulls over what just happened. She eventually comes to the conclusion that Valentina is in trouble and she has to do something to help her, so she goes to the Eastoff family. Rather than asking literally anybody else in the room for help, including the actual adults, Hollis instead asks to speak with Silas. However, as they're walking along the halls, Hollis apologizes for what happened the night before, and then needs to spell out what it means to be in a committed relationship without actually being engaged means because Silas doesn't understand what the problem is. And then she finally gets around to her point. Since she had promised not to tell anybody, Hollis has to carefully word her question. She finally asks about Valentina's parents. Silas catches on and says that they were highly outspoken about the things Quentin was doing and caught the attention of the Darkest Knights, which might as well name them Assassins McAssassin Face. He talks about a couple of people that the public know were assassinated on Quentin's orders, and then says that when Quentin had Valentina's parents killed, it put people in their place. Their bodies were left in front of the castle gate. Everyone saw them. I saw them. It was very deliberate. And Valentina, when she made her way to their bodies, she made a sound that I've never heard come out of a human before. I still can't imagine her grief. This took such an abrupt turn into Game of Thrones territory, I think I might have whiplash. Also, such a cheery topic. Can we go back to talking about miscarriages? Hollis also suddenly understands why the Eastoff family left isolate. She asks if Valentina is in that much danger. However, Silas says that Valentina will be fine so long as she can produce an heir, which not looking good for her at the moment. However, Silas seems to think that the best thing for Valentina right now is a friend, which not really helping, but at the same time I can understand where he's coming from. One does not simply assassinate a king. Hollis then has to circle the conversation back to her, because of course she does. She says that she wants to be around Silas, but she can't. She can't even begin to think of what might happen to the Eastaugh family if Jameson got angry at them and sent them back to isolate. But you are my son, Hollis. It was different from what Jameson had said about me a dozen times before. He'd said I was the sun, bright and distant, shining on everything in reach. Being Silas's son alone made me feel like I had a reason to rise in the first place. Ugh. Silas knows that it's hard, but he agrees that he'll stay away from Hollis too. However, he asks for one last kiss before they part, and Hollis is a little too eager to kiss him, if you ask me. I'm also still waiting for some sort of consequence to happen because of Hollis's affections for Silas. And wow. So that just happened. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss anything. Also, while you're waiting for the new video next week, be sure to catch up on my other video series. If you're already caught up with that, then you can head over to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated daily. People who support me on Patreon also have early access to my daily Snark, but also bonus Snark that isn't up anywhere else. People who donate to me either by supporting me on Patreon or by making a one-time donation via PayPal or Ko-fi also get shoutouts in my videos. Thank you so much to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me already. Be sure to join my Patreon or donate to hear your name next week. Also, if you want to read some of the stuff that I've published, then you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have 19 erotic short stories, 1 short story collection, and 1 full-length novel. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys. Scarlett and